I don't know about you, but that's maybe one of the things I don't miss about pre-pandemic life is movie theaters. I love being able to pause and go to the bathroom without missing like a big key part of the movie. But hey, I just want to welcome you to One Church. For those of you watching online, and also for our future North Tonawanda family. Some are coming here on Sunday, some are watching online. If you missed it, by the way, Pastor Rick mentioned just a few weeks ago that we are putting down the groundwork for our third campus in North Tonawanda, which will be launching in 2022. So just welcome to those of you who are tuning in and are becoming a part of One Church. I wanted to let you know of something on the front end, and we've been announcing it at the end of the service the last few weeks, and that is our church app. And I wanted to mention it on the front end because of the message note feature. I know a lot of you have missed when we had the paper message notes, but if you have the church app, if you hit at the very bottom of the screen where it says Sundays, and then message notes, you can, as long as you make sure that it's the right campus at the top. If you're on the Medina one, you could just hit the Akron one. You'll have the message notes every single week. You can go back to filling in the blanks like we used to when we had the paper notes. If you don't have the app, it's really easy to find if you just search One Church NY in whatever app store you use. It's there. It's only $99 for the app. Just kidding. It's a free app. But we would love for you to download that. I know over 300 people have already downloaded it, we're just blown away by that. But on that Sundays tab, you can find almost everything we talk about on a Sunday. So if we have an announcement, if we have a sign up, everything is there right in the app. And there's a couple things that we'll mention at the end of the service that are on there. I also wanted to welcome any first-time guests that we have here today. We're just honored to have you as a guest, and you picked a perfect Sunday for it to be your first Sunday for a couple of reasons. One is we're starting a new series called At the Movies today, which every week during the series we're going to look at one movie that has either come out recently or maybe just a popular movie. And more importantly, we'll look at the theme of that movie and what the Bible has to say or teach us about that theme. So it's a really fun series. We have a lot of fun doing this. So that's the first good reason why it's your first week here. But the second one is we have a free movie ticket for you. So if you're a first-time guest, or if you brought someone who's a first-time guest, we would love to give you a movie ticket. And I'll give you some direction at the end of the service how to get that movie ticket. But when we were picking out what movies we were going to do for this series, and it came my turn to pick a movie and a topic, I really only had one category of movie to pick from because I have a 2.5-year-old at home, so the only movies I've seen the last 2.5 years are Disney movies. So I had a very limited selection of movies to pick from, and the one I want to talk about today is a newer Disney movie. I don't think a lot of you probably have seen it if you're like the first service. But it's the movie called Luca. Raise your hand if you've seen the movie Luca. All right, more than the first service. That's why I like the 10 o'clock service better. But it's this awesome movie, and I mean, any new Disney movie is awesome right now because I cannot take Frozen or Moana one more time. So when there's a new Disney movie, it's just like a breath of fresh air, and I loved this movie for so many reasons. It is a story of, and stick with me if you haven't seen it, it's a story of these two sea monsters that when they leave the water and they go on to dry land, they become human. So if they're wet, they're a sea monster, and if they're dry, they are a human. And it's really the story of this friendship that's developed because they're two young boys who are different than everyone else. It's a friendship that's formed based on that. But throughout the movie, you see the friendship get strengthened as they go through different trials. And by the end of the movie, you see this friendship that is actually sacrificial. They sacrifice for each other. And it's a beautiful story of a friendship. And I want to show you just a preview of some of the voice actors and the directors just kind of talking about the friendship in the movie. Go ahead and watch this.
Luca is a story of friendships that are authentic and only found around a certain age.
We underdogs have to look out for each other, right? Underdogs!
I love this moment in a young person's life, having someone push you out of your comfort zone to discover yourself.
There's a certain innocence to this. It's really kind of beautiful.
Come on!
I had the luck of meeting my best friend Alberto when I was 11. He had a ton of passion and was consciously testing his own fears.
Who's holding the ramp?
The turtle.
I wonder if I would have had the courage to go and chase my career in animation had I not met my best friend.
I really loved watching the friendship between Luca, Julia, and Alberto. I'm hoping that it will bring back a lot of memories for people of summers when they were kids.
My birthday's in the summer, so a lot of really, really good childhood memories of summertime, and it was always a pool party.
Let's go swim. I guess that's how humans swim?
Ugh, that's embarrassing.
Some kids go away to camp, and you're like, where my dogs at? But then the key ones that are in town, they like to party.
These are the friendships that teach us lessons, build your self-esteem, and you have like the sense of belonging.
I got friends that believe in me, who push me. Like, I would tell them an idea that I have, and they'd be like, make it, do it. This movie is the perfect example of that.
Take me, gravity!
These friendships that help us find ourselves. That is really at the heart of the story of Luca.
It's such a good movie, and it's a movie about how their friendships bring the best out of each other. Alberto brings out the adventure side of Luca and teaches him how to take some healthy risks in life. And Luca brings out some wisdom for Alberto, and towards the end helps him heal from some wounds of his past. And each one makes the other one better. And while watching this movie, I thought every person needs a friend like Luca or Alberto, a friend that makes you better in life. And that's what I want to focus on today, is developing friendships that make us better, or for our context, to develop friendships that make us more like Jesus. Because if there's one thing I know and one thing that I've observed, it's that we are likely the average of the five closest people in our lives. We likely become the average of the five closest people in our lives. In fact, if you and I had never met, but I knew your five closest friends, I could probably learn a lot about you. I could learn about your hobbies and your interests. Chances are you root for the same team as your five closest friends. Chances are you share a lot of the same hobbies. Three of your friends are hunters, avid hunters. Chances are you enjoy hunting. If your close friend group are all bowlers, chances are you own your own bowling ball. You probably watch similar TV shows and movies, and you might have a similar taste in music. But I could also probably learn a lot about the things that you value in life. And lastly, I could probably get a pretty accurate gauge at your spiritual life based on the five people you are closest with. Your church attendance and prayer life and Bible reading and how you live out your faith probably falls somewhere in the middle of the five closest people in your life. Now, there's going to be seasons where maybe we are a little bit further along or a little bit further behind than our friends, but over time we will gravitate kind of towards the center of those who influence the most. So our key verse of the day, it's Proverbs 12:26. It's our memory verse for today. And let's read this out loud together. If you're watching online or here in the room, let's read this together. It says, "The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray." Now, before we get into some markers of a good or a bad friend, I want to address the tension that we find in this verse and really throughout a lot of Scripture. Because the Bible's clear in this verse and a lot of verses that we need to be very careful who our friends are. Yet the Bible also teaches that we should reach out to the world, that we should, like Jesus, be a friend of sinners. The Bible talks about how bad company corrupts good character, yet Jesus was friends with some bad company. He was a friend with sinners. We learned just a couple weeks ago how Jesus was friends with so many sinners that he began to have the reputation of a glutton and a drunkard. The Bible tells us not to associate with angry people, but it also says to go into the world and to share the good news. So how do we resolve this tension? Should we only be friends with Christians, or should we be a friend of sinners like Jesus? Now, if you look at Jesus' life and example, this is one thing we can learn from him. is that Jesus loved everyone equally, but he didn't spend equal time with everyone. He loved and he reached out and he befriended everyone equally, but he didn't spend equal time with everyone. Jesus preached and he healed and he drank with everyone, but he didn't spend equal time with everyone he hung out with. Jesus spent the majority of his time with his disciples, 12 close followers, and minus one because one was not a great follower. We learned about Judas a few weeks ago. He betrayed Jesus, but Jesus spent the majority of his time with the 12, and then the most time he spent was with his three closest friends, Peter, James, and John. So here's how we resolve that tension we talked about is we choose our closest friends carefully so that we can go into all the world and be a light. We choose our closest friends with an end goal in mind so that we can be built up and have a strong spiritual foundation so that we can be at a good enough place where we can go into all the world and be a light and not be influenced by others. So like Jesus, we choose our inner circle carefully. Now, we're going to talk about in a moment some friends that we need in our lives and the type of friend we should be in our lives. But first, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about three different types of friends that maybe we don't need as much. So here are some red flags to look for in our friendships. These are friends that we should be a light to. We should have them as our friends, but maybe not in our inner circle, in the circle that influences us. The first one is an obvious one. It is a friend who pulls you into sin. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." Again, this one's obvious, so we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but I need to bring it up because chances are we've all had a friend in our past, or maybe currently, that consistently tries to pull us into sin. Like every time we are with that person, there's this overwhelming temptation to do something that we know we probably shouldn't do. When I was 18 and 19 years old, I lived with some roommates, and all we did was pull each other into sin. They pulled me into sin, I pulled them into sin, and we would have all said that we were Christians, but none of us were active in our faith. But eventually I decided that wasn't the direction that I wanted my life to go in, so I started to make some changes, and I wanted to live a life that honored God, but it was very hard to do this while living in the apartment with these roommates. Because again, every time I was with them, I was living with them, I saw them every day, they still had influence in my life, so the temptation was strong to start to do what they were doing, so I knew I needed to distance myself from this group of friends. So I moved out of that apartment. I still remained friends with them, but I had to seek out friends that pointed me towards Jesus, friends that had the same values that I was developing in my life. Again, I didn't cut this group of friends out of my life, but I just limited the influence and the time that they had. So my question for us is, this is a hard one, who was the last friend that you sinned with? And has it become a habit? I understand we make mistakes, there's nights that get out of hand, but has it become a thing where every time we are with that person, we find ourselves doing something or in a place that wouldn't honor God? So we avoid friends who pull us into sin. The second one is a friend who gossips. Gossip is one of the most dangerous things for relationships, for families, for churches. Gossip can do a lot of damage. Look at Proverbs chapter 16. It says, "A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends." So here's how you can identify a gossip or a gossiper, because sometimes they can be a little sneaky in how they do it. But how you identify when someone's just a gossiper is you look at the intent and the type of information they are sharing. So for example, the intent, gossipers will often have the goal of building themselves up, exalting themselves at the expense of someone else. They'll push someone down while at the same time bring themselves up, and they are tricky because they often do it in a way that seems caring or concerned for the person. This is where churches or small groups or Sunday schools can get in trouble because it will come across in the form of a prayer request maybe. Hey guys, we really need to pray for this person. Did you hear what they did? They did this with that person, and it's really bad, so we need to pray for this person. And what they're doing is they're pushing someone down while making it obvious they would never do that themselves, and it turns into gossip. So you pay attention to the intent, but you also have to pay attention to the type of information being shared. Gossip is almost always about a perceived fault or failing, or something potentially embarrassing, shameful, or private. Proverbs chapter 20 says, a gossip betrays a confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. So here's my advice. If you have a friend who, when you think about it, they just are gossiping a lot, my advice is to try to shut it down. Try to politely tell them that you don't feel comfortable talking about the person or situation. And one of two things will happen. Either they will recognize what they're doing, or maybe more likely is they will go find someone who is more receptive of the gossip, because gossipers always attract other gossipers. But these aren't the type of people that we want influencing our life. So we avoid a friend who pulls us into sin, a friend who gossips, and the third one is a self-centered friend. Proverbs 17, verse 17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. One of my best friends, I honestly don't talk to him all that much. We both have toddlers, and we're just in a busy season of life where we might only see each other every few months, but consistently throughout the last probably 2 decades, I've known him since middle school. Consistently, anytime I go through a hard time in life, anytime I'm going through a storm or a trial, he is the first person to call. He's the first person to check in and to talk and to pray over me. And I appreciate it so much, having a friend that when I'm going through a hard time is there for me. Now, figuring out if a friend is going to stick around during the hard seasons of life can be difficult, because we're not always in a hard season of life. Sometimes we make friends with someone when we're going through a really good time, and without that testing scenario, it's hard to tell if they're going to stick around. So a couple examples of things that we can look for. One is just a needy friend, a friend that you are always propping up, encouraging, giving yourself to, yet it's never reciprocated. It's not necessarily a bad sign, but don't be surprised if that person's not the first one to be there when you're going through a hard time. And the second thing is a friend who talks but never listens. If you have a friend that when you are with, the conversation is always centered around their life, and they're never asking questions, they're never checking in with you, again, they might not be the first person to show up when you need a friend. When Danielle and I first got married, we went on a double date with this couple that we had met recently, and we thought we had a lot in common with them. We kind of hit it off, so we decided we'll go on a double date with them. And I'll never forget this time we were at the Olive Garden, and we're eating, and we're there for maybe 60 or 90 minutes, and every minute of the conversation revolved around their lives. We're asking questions, we're asking about their careers and all these different things, and not once did they ask about our lives. And we got back in our car after that date, and we looked at each other, and we're like, well, that wasn't fun. It was just like, first of all, they were very uninteresting people, but they were so self-centered and focused on themselves. And I'm sure they're not like that all the time, but it just was a sign that maybe this isn't a friendship we want to invest in. So we talked about 3 red flags to look for in a friend that pulls you into sin, a friend who gossips, a friend who's self-centered. But I want to shift our focus onto the type of friend that we all need in life. And I want to take it from the approach that not a type of friend that we look for in life necessarily, but the type of friend that we should be to other people. Because I found the best way to find good friends in life is to be a good friend. When we are the type of friend that we are looking for, and we are these things that we'll talk about in a moment, we tend to find friends that are also these things for us. So 3 traits that we should strive to be in our friendships. The first one is this, is a friend who makes others better. When I was younger, I played soccer all throughout my childhood. I played in town leagues and then travel leagues and eventually for my high school. And I remember when I was in travel leagues, I tended to play on teams that were maybe 1 or 2 years older than me. So if I was 12 years old, I would play in like the U13 league or the U14 league. They were always teams that were slightly better, slightly older, slightly bigger and faster. And the reason is when I was in those house leagues or with kids more my age, I scored a lot of goals. I wasn't the best kid ever on the team, but I was pretty good. So I would be in these leagues that were a couple steps ahead of me in my skill level. And the truth is if I played with kids that were only my age, I probably would have scored more goals. I might have had more fun, but I wouldn't have been challenged in that sport. But when you play with players who are bigger and faster and shoot harder and are just more experienced, it challenges you and it brings out a better side of your abilities. By playing soccer with others who were a few steps ahead of me, it made me better. And this applies to every area of life. If you want to be a better runner, for example, you don't run with people who are slower than you. You run with people who are faster than you and can run at a faster pace. If you want to eat healthier, you don't eat with people who are just eating pizza and ice cream and chicken wings every day of the week. You eat with people who challenge you and who draw out something better than you. If you want to be a better musician, you play with better musicians. Proverbs 27:17 says this, is iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. So let me explain how we do this as a church, because this principle, this is one of our staff values. This is something that we take very seriously as a church. At least once a year, our entire staff, we will travel to another church who is a few steps ahead of us. And we will just learn at the feet of that church. We will learn what is working, what is not working. Not with the goal of becoming that church or a smaller version of that church, but because they've learned some things along the way that we haven't learned yet. So we want to learn from them. But it doesn't end there, because several times a year, our staff will meet with churches who are maybe a few steps behind us that we can come alongside of, that we can train or coach or teach things that we've learned along the way. I just think that's a healthy way to be as a church, where you're learning from others and you're teaching others at the same time. Learning from those a couple steps ahead and teaching a couple steps behind. And I think the same thing applies for friendships. If we have friends in our life that are a few steps ahead of us and in some important category, specifically spiritually, it will push us to be more like Jesus. And when we're doing that for other people, maybe as a small group leader, maybe just as a friend, that's called discipleship. We get to help them and point them towards Jesus. I just think that is a healthy way to operate. So my question to you is, are you making your friends better? By you being in your friend's life, are you making them more like Jesus or less like Jesus? And do you have friends that are doing that for you? Are you sharpening each other? So we want to be a friend who makes others better. The second one is this, is to be a friend who encourages others. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, it says, so encourage each other and build each other up, just as you are already doing. This might be the most practical thing that we can do today, to encourage others. Raise your hand if this month you've received too much encouragement. No one would raise their hand, right? Now, even if you had the best boss and the best family and they're constantly encouraging you, I think we could all say that we would like maybe even a little more encouragement. Why? Because encouragement can make our day. Encouragement just, it brings joy and it brings this life to us. when we receive it. I want to share something I learned from Pastor Rick. It's something that he has done with his family for a long time, and he started to incorporate it with our staff as well. If it's someone's birthday, we will go around at our staff meeting, and each of us will share one thing that we appreciate or we admire about the person whose birthday it is. And I'll be honest, the first couple times we did it, it was a little awkward because it's so abnormal for our culture to just openly share what we admire and appreciate about other people. But I tell you, it's one of my favorite times when it's someone's birthday and we get to do that and we get to build each other up. It's a beautiful thing. Tears are shed. And honestly, I've been trying to do that outside of just staff meetings. When it's someone's birthday, and I don't do this every time, but I try to, rather than just text happy birthday, I try to text happy birthday and then a little note of encouragement. Just a little note of what I admire or what I appreciate about that person. And here's the beautiful thing about this. It costs you nothing. It costs $0 to be an encouragement to someone else, but you can make someone's day in the process. And I've been trying to do that, not just on birthdays, but just randomly with friends. I'll just text them an encouraging note, and it is amazing the response that you receive. So let's do this. Before we move on to the last point, take out your phone. Let's text someone. We're going to pause the service for 1 minute, and I want to encourage you to encourage someone else. Text someone who's not in the room. It could be something really simple, and here's the thing I want you to notice. This might feel a little awkward. This might feel a little uncomfortable, but use that as maybe a sign that you could grow in your encouragement with other people. So I'm going to do it as well. We'll pause for a moment and just text someone. So I had a head start. I was able to, I knew this was going to be a points. So I already knew who and what I was going to text. So if you're kind of drawing a blank right now, it's okay. Again, this was a new thing for me at one point. It's just not something that our culture does on a regular basis. But what I want to challenge you with is to make this a habit in life. Never be afraid to encourage someone, because I'm telling you, it will bring out the best in other people. It will show them the love of Jesus. It will show others that you are a light in this world, and it is so simple and it costs us nothing. So make this a habit. If you can't think of anyone in the service, do it at some point today. Just text someone something you appreciate or something you admire. So we need to be a friend who makes others better, who encourages others. And the third thing is to be a friend who tells the truth. Proverbs 27. It says, better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Paraphrase, real friends don't tell you what you want to hear. Real friends tell you what you need to hear. Several years ago, I took golf lessons, and I had golfed since I was a little kid. I just always golfed, always loved golfing. But as an adult, my scores were always at a certain number, and I wanted to be more consistent in some things. So I took some golf lessons, and I remember the very first day I showed up for lessons, the instructor, he gave me a bucket of 30 golf balls, and he said, hit these golf balls. I'm not going to say a thing. I'm just going to observe your swing. So I hit these 30 golf balls, and at the end of, after I hit the last one, I turned over to him just to see what he would say. And he said, we got a lot to work on. And over the course of the next 5 weeks, 5 lessons, he kind of built my swing from the ground up. He changed my pre-shot routine. He changed my grip. He changed my stance, my backswing, my follow-through, my swing speed. He changed everything about my golf swing. And I was a decent golfer beforehand, but my scores were not improving. And ever since then, it has been a steadily improvement year after year after year because he built this foundation for my golf swing. Now imagine for a moment if after he watched those first 30 hits, he stepped back and he just started clapping and said, "Brian, good swing. That is great. I wouldn't change a thing. You're doing a really good job." That would have felt really good in the moment. That would have probably been what I wanted to hear, like, "Oh, you're doing a great job, don't change a thing." But would that have helped? No. It wasn't what I needed to hear. I needed to hear that there was a lot that can be improved, and he was the person to do it. See, real friends don't tell you what you want to hear. Real friends tell you what you need to hear, which is the truth. So pull out your phone again. Just kidding, we're not going to. Because these aren't things we text, is it? These are face-to-face conversations, and they're also not conversations we have with just anyone. We don't do this with an acquaintance or someone who's just a little bit more than acquaintance. This is something that we do with friends who we have a deep friendship built on trust with. Those are the types of friends that we have permission to speak truth into, and they have permission to speak truth into us. I have a good friend who did this for me when I was in college. It was shortly after I'd moved out of the department that I talked about in the beginning of the message, and I was trying my best to live like Jesus, and I'm trying to make the right decisions and to shape my life in a way that would honor God. And in the process, there was this girl that I wanted to date, but she wasn't a Christian. And I remember my friends saying, "Brian, don't date her. Brian, you can't have that influence in your life. Brian, you know the Bible is crystal clear that we should not pursue relationships with someone with a different faith than us." You know what I wanted to hear in the moment? I wanted to hear, "Brian, I'm so happy for you. Brian, I'm so happy you found someone you're interested in. Maybe if you date her, she will become a Christian." Which, side note, that is never a good idea. That's what I wanted to hear. But that's not what I needed to hear. I needed to hear truth, and it was a hard truth, but because our friendship was built on trust and I had a high respect for him, I listened to him, and I'm so thankful I did, because several months later, I met my wife. You ever have those moments where you just wonder how your life would be different, and you're so thankful for the decisions you made because of where you ended up? I'm so thankful that my friend was not afraid to speak truth into my life. So do we have friends like that? Do we have friends that we've built so much trust between the two of you that they are not afraid and you're not afraid to speak hard truths in a way that you can trust them and they will trust you? So back to what we talked about in the beginning. Who are the 5 friends we're closest to? Are they pointing us to Jesus? Are they making us better? Are we making them better? Is there a sense of encouragement? Do you have permission to speak hard truths into their lives, or do you shy away from that? These are all friends that we need in our life. And I just want to say something. We live in the most connected generation that's ever existed, yet study after study after study has shown that we're also the loneliest generation. So if you're sitting through this message thinking that you want me to think of friends that make me better and all these things, I can barely think of a friend. I just want to tell you, you are not alone in that thinking. We live in a generation where people are friendless right now. So 2 things of encouragement. First is that you are in the right place, because we build our church in a way that we want to help people have relationships with other people that make us better and point us to Jesus. That's why we do small groups, and that's why we do serve teams. It helps disciple and all that kind of stuff, but more than anything, it provides Christ-based relationships with other people that can build each other up. So you're in the right place, and my encouragement to you is to jump in. join a group, join a serve team, and watch what God can do through that. But the second thing I want to say is that we have the best friend imaginable in Jesus. Start there. Start there. Invest time in him. Watch him build you up and make you better. Watch him encourage you and give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. And watch him through the Bible, through the Holy Spirit, speak truth into your life, sometimes a hard truth. But we have the best friend imaginable in Jesus. Would you pray with me? Father, I thank you so much for the grace that you've given me through friends and, God, different seasons and different friends that you've just provided in my life that have made me better. I thank you for my family, the group that maybe influences me the most. Just how wonderfully they love me and how they influence me in the right direction. And God, I pray that we would all find that in this life. That we would find friends that build us up and encourage us and can speak real truth into our life. And God, more than anything, we thank you for your friendship. That you don't just view us as lowly servants, but you view us as friends and as sons and daughters. And God, what a beautiful and grace-filled idea that is. So God, we thank you for that today.